What's up? Welcome to the Off the Cuff, the I'm Right, You're Wrong show with your boy Keefees The Elite Hunter. He's the one hosting this, and right now I don't have my co-host with me, but that's okay because the thing is, I have someone else helping me mod today. We got Matt Yester on the panel. Say hello, man. Is that how you say hello?
Hold on a second, I think he lagged.
Oh,
Keefees, you were lagging on my side.
oh, Matt, well, I don't think I'm lagging with anybody else.
Wait, does anyone
On my end?
else? Oh, yeah, Matt, you had your mic on mute.
Yeah, I had it on mute, but Keefees was really, really slow on my end.
Are you hearing me?
He was all digitizing. Yeah, you're good now.
Okay,
Already
good.
we're on a bad start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, man. So I'm sorry
she
about this,
blushed.
ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I try to keep this as professional as I can, but I don't know.
Let's just go
Sometimes stuff
through
just
it. Let's just
happens.
go.
All right. So basically, welcome to the I'm Right, You're Wrong show, where we provide a properly structured debate room for the Google Plus community. Tonight's topic will be about the righteousness of the atonement. Now, a brief description of what this is. Basically, if you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. He paid the price and everything. However, we're kind of arguing like how valid is that? Like how righteous is that really of God to do it and everything? And I'll just let the debater who's going to bring up his points, which is going to be Des, he will do a better job of explaining it than me. So I'm just going to introduce the debaters that we have for our show tonight. Leaders, we have right first of all representing our what do you call it, our affirmative, the one who's making this accusation that trying to question the righteousness of the atonement would be our basic atheist, one person who just happened to stumble across my channel, and I'm glad for it. I got like a Keefees fan here, and we have our newcomer, Des Saunders. How are you doing, man?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing well, thanks.
All
I
right.
suppose yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. We're just doing introductions. You'll get your chance. And on the other side, who's going to defend the Christian faith, we see the return of the leader of Spiritually Honest Ministries. It is our very humble yet very righteous Christian anarchist.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody.
Yeah, and that's his catchphrase, just in case you didn't know that by now. All right. So now we are going to start this debate. Now, just to inform you guys, I run a properly structured and moderated civil debate. So the structure for today's debate is as follows. Debater A and B will have time to make their introductive/constructive argument, and each of them will be given 8 minutes maximum. And then after they do that, each debater A and B will have an open discussion round, which will be 10 minutes maximum. Then after that, each of the debaters will have their conclusion round, which will be 8 minutes maximum for each debater. And then at the very end, I'll open up the room for the Q&A session so you guys can ask questions. All right, so Des, are you ready? I'm just going to
Yeah,
pull
I'm
up
ready.
my app here. So when I give the go signal, you can make your argument, okay?
Cool.
All right, so right now, debater A is beginning his intro/constructive argument. All right, so hope you have your notes ready.
Yep.
All
So I can
right,
start.
in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so we called this debate about referring to the righteousness of the atonement, but it's not really just the righteousness of the atonement. It's all kinds of things. It's whether the atonement actually atones, right? Jesus has died, and yet you've still done what you've done, for example. So how does it atone? But more to the point, though, it's actually the logical veracity of the atonement, by which I mean, can what the atonement claims itself is actually happen? So let me go through this then. So the atonement claims basically that Jesus has taken my punishment and Keefees' punishment and my mother's punishment, you know, everyone's punishment. But let's just keep things simple then, okay? What is my punishment? So you can talk about all kinds of different situations, like, you know, in just normal earthly natural society, like a criminal, he takes his punishment, maybe he goes to prison, right? But you couldn't call the criminal taking his punishment if he wasn't being punished. So whether it's like you go to prison, you get spanked as a child, or in the Bible's case, you go to hell forever and get set on fire, whatever it is, the definition of your punishment is always going to be you being punished. However, Jesus says that he wants to take my punishment, which is me being punished, so that I don't have to be punished. And you see the logical ridiculousness of that, because you see it anyway. So basically I have a simple argument, and it's basically formulated on 3 premises, and then I like Christian anarchists to basically say, does he agree with them, does he disagree with them, and so on, and to work his way out from that. So the first premise then is, my punishment is me being punished. Do you agree or disagree? Second one then, Jesus is not me. And the third one, therefore Jesus cannot take my punishment. So again, I'll just say that again. So my punishment is me being punished. Jesus is not me. Therefore Jesus cannot take my punishment. If you say that my punishment isn't me being punished in some way or another, then you're ridiculous. You've put yourself in a position of absolute ridiculousness, because how could you possibly punish me without punishing me, and how could it be my punishment if it's not me being punished? You see, this is the mistake that Christians make. The Christians think that the punishment of the world is, you know, that well, first of all, they think that the punishment of the world is going to go is that the world goes to hell. Jesus didn't go to hell. Jesus was crucified. So you're wrong on that point already. But let's just say, for argument's sake, right? Christians think that their punishment is being crucified, but it's not being crucified, it's themselves being crucified, and Christ isn't themselves. Christ is Christ. We're not God. They would say that gladly. So it cannot happen. I like to put it this way, and maybe this is a nice little phrase that you can all remember, right? Jesus cannot die for me because Jesus cannot die as me, right? Again, the death that I deserve consists of a death that I die. It's not a death that someone else dies, it's the death that I die. And if Jesus isn't me, then he can't die my death. I mean, again, it's a really weird way of phrasing it, you know, to call it my death. You know, when we call something mine, or we say my about it, we mean that we possess it, but we also mean, though, in a more less literal sense, that it relates to us in some sense. Well, how does that death relate to me then? Well, it's the one that I die. But again, Jesus is claiming to take a death that only relates to me, and that I'm supposed to be the one who deserves it and who dies it, and yet he doesn't actually. Anyway, so I mean, is that all that I have to say? I think I have more to say. I hope I do. Let me just check my notes, and I suppose you can absorb that in the meantime. In fact, yeah. I think that's really it. I think that's my rant over. To be honest, yeah, I think that's my rant over.
You still got 2 more minutes.
Okay, 2 more minutes. So again, yeah, I just want to say that it's.
You don't have to use up the time. Just.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to draw home that point. Then it's just a logical impossibility. I mean, because again, if you say that my punishment isn't me being punished in some way or another, whether it's me being crucified, me going to hell, me getting a beating, whatever it is, it's got to be me some way. Even if it was like, even if the action wasn't actually done to me, it still has to punish me. Like, say if you're a kid and your mum says to you, oh, I'm going to punish you. Yeah, who talks like this? But anyway, oh, I'm going to punish you by taking away your laptop for a week. Now, they don't actually touch you, but they still punish you. You're the one being punished. But again, Jesus is claiming he's going to take your punishment, which is defined as you being punished in some way or another, so that you won't be punished, which is the most absurd thing. And okay, cool, so I'm actually using my time now. And the reason why this matters as well is because it proves that even if God did exist, which he doesn't, and it's silly and whatever, but even if he did exist, he's irrational, he's illogical, and there isn't a reason, a valid reason, rather, there are wrong reasons, there isn't a valid reason to follow the gospel, to obey it, to think that this is rational. Yeah, I think that would do.
All right.
Cool.
Now we're going to let Christian anarchist build up his constructive argument to why the righteousness of the atonement is valid. Are you ready, Christian anarchist?
Go
All
ahead.
right, and go.
So the case that I am arguing for today on the Christian side is concerning the doctrine of the atonement. Is it righteous? Is it logical to allow such a thing, such as a person deciding to, take the punishment and penalty for the sins of the other people? I would start by stating some notes first. First off, the atonements that were being done back then were usually done with animal sacrifices, and one of the things that started to make sense of these is in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11, where it states, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar, to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul." And so, back then, when Abraham was offering sacrifice, basically in the story where Abraham is told to sacrifice his son Isaac, the reason why this happened, and then eventually at the end it was replaced with a ram instead, was because God was going to show they weren't going to be like the other cults or religions that was around them in their society that was offering human sacrifices. But then later found out that this tradition wasn't going to do well, but at some point in Isaiah there was a prophecy that was to come of a Messiah, and so far Jesus would be said to be said Messiah. And there are several verses in New Testament that can point out to this. One of these that I've seen is, "Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins," because also if you find in Romans, I think, there's a verse that says, the penalty of sin, the wages of sin is death. And so we're being dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. And this is mainly referring to the concept of the atonement, that Jesus died so that we could be cleansed. In Hebrews 9, verse 12, "Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us." But then the question gets asked, Jesus coming about doing this, what makes this, righteous? He mentioned earlier that my punishment, that if I'm me, for example, and I did something, and then comes to the premise of I need to be punished, so there comes the punishment. But Jesus says he's going to try to take the punishment, and Jesus is not me, so logically it cannot happen for Jesus to say that he gets to take my punishment, which I find irrational itself. And I find it funny that he mentions a home situation to where someone gets the computer taken, I take the computer away for a week. Because I remember my brother was getting punished for something. And me being bound to my brother and liking him, like a brother, I decided to argue with my mom and try to take away his punishment and let it be done unto me. So I ended up talking back to her. Needless to say, both of us were punished that day. But then that goes to something else. Jesus shows a classic example of love and justice through this. In John chapter 15, verse 13, he states, "Greater love have no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends," which if someone were to say that that is not justice for someone to willingly put their own lives down just so they can save other people, the motive is that he's trying to save other people, And to say that that's in itself unjust is just absurd. In fact, there's another part in Proverbs 21, verse 15, that also brings about the idea of justice and judgment. It is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. So mainly, there's a different perception of what is just and unrighteousness, depending on who the person is. But however, the objective truth still exists, even though sometimes the perceptions are quite commonly different. But the question is about this being a man or not. I mean, Jesus is part of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, that Jesus is God, and the verse that definitely goes to this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So in the beginning was the Word, and Word was God, so logically follows that God was in the beginning. And then at some point later it says that the Word became flesh. So if you think about it close enough, it can logically follow that that's where Jesus is being mentioned, but also note that earlier that the Bible is stating that the Word was God. So replace Word with God, since it's saying the Word was God, in the sense for an argument for the Trinity, but not to argue for modalism. But that's for another debate and another time. So I will leave my arguments there.
All right. All right. So now I just want to address something because I'm getting a lot of notifications about this kind of thing, and it's kind of my fault in a little sense because I have been messaging people, sharing the link, and people are not really knowing what's going on. But let me just tell you this for anybody watching right now. People are asking me for the join link. The thing is, I'm trying to have a proper debate show here, so no one's going to join. Going to be able. No one else who's not part of the panel tonight is going to be able to join the call until it's the Q&A session. All right. So everybody who's asking me for a join link, just hang on until the Q&A session. Then you can ask your question in that. Right now, we don't want anybody else in the room, but the debaters and the moderators. Okay. So just to let you know, like that's why I'm not sending out the link. This is not just some free discussion that anybody can come in. This is properly structured and everything. All right, and the Q&A session will be after our debate. All right, so next up we have debater A and debater B are going to have their open discussion round. It's going to be about 10 minutes maximum. So I'll just set the timer here. And are both of you guys ready?
Yep.
All right, so the way to open discussion round works is that you guys can freely talk among yourselves. If I feel that it's getting too heated or whatever, I mean, I have my debater over here to help me out with that. So if you guys just start yelling at each other, or, or if you guys are going to ask, like, so don't ask, like, if you're going to pound your opponent with questions and all that stuff,
Yeah, just
Keep
be balanced.
Yes, it
Nice
has
back and forth each.
Let's have a
Let's do
civil
one or
conversation.
two questions
Let's
each.
not,
yeah.
let's not pull any. Well, I'm not going to mention any names. All right, let's go. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
And go.
All right. So, do you want to ask the first question, Des, or do you want me?
You can ask.
All right. So, what exactly do you find unjust or irrational about someone asking for, or taking someone else's penalty or sentence, rather it be something to as extreme as what Jesus did, or rather it be something as simple and minor as someone's TV time or video game time is taken away?
Yeah. So do you know why we exist? It's not to do what someone tells you to do necessarily. It's to do whatever is just. If you're acting unjustly, you're acting in a way that you shouldn't act, and if you were to only ever act unjustly, then you shouldn't exist. So that's premise, okay? So now we have to think about then, in this one specific situation of punishment, okay, if I've genuinely done something wrong, and I genuinely do deserve to be punished, that means that it's game over. It's an objective fact. It's over. There's no debate. There's no argument in your favor there. You deserve to be punished. Okay, and that means then that if you deserve to be punished, the right response to deserving to be punished isn't to try and get out of what you deserve. It's to actually say, okay, there's something wrong with me. You're right. I deserve to be punished. Now, again, this is the problem, though. He's calling it punishment, but it's abuse. But basically, though, so the right response is to say that I deserve to be punished, because the punishment is meant to do two things, basically. It's either meant to bring you into a place where you want to not do what you're being punished for, or where you can't do it anymore, basically. And if it doesn't do those two things, it's not even punishment, it's just abuse. And that's the point with crucifying Jesus, and because supposedly I'm meant to be crucified. How does that bring me to a place where I've now got logical reasons to see, or that I'm seeing with logical reasons why I shouldn't lie, why I shouldn't steal? What's crucifying me? Because, oh, I don't want to be crucified because that feels pain. That makes me feel pain. What's that to do with why I shouldn't lie, why I shouldn't steal? All the reasons why I shouldn't do what I'm being punished for. Nothing. Of course, it does get me into a place where I maybe can't go out and commit adultery because I'm being nailed to a cross. However, it's getting you to that place, but it's also causing you way more pain and suffering than you need to be in to achieve the same thing. You could just imprison me, and in that case, yeah, I would argue that in the ideal world I'd be unimprisoned, but then I'd also, with my unimprisonment, not want to do wrong things, so it's less unideal that I'd be imprisoned, and that would make it just. But again, you could achieve that without putting me in all this pain. What is God's fetish with pain? What is pain meant to do? You know, if God is loving, why does he want people to experience pain for the pure purpose that they suffer? Not to help them in any way. Because it's about pure punishment and vengeance.
Well, here's the thing. Well, I'm going to state this first, just so I'm not going to try to advocate as a hippie of this. In Isaiah 45, verse 7, God says, I form the light and create the darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So there are bad things that happen, and then there's some good things. But then the question comes as to, according to God's standards, what can be defined as good and evil? And I think that's where humans can somewhat have an agreement of what is defined as good and what is defined as evil, since we're made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. But when it comes to certain topics like punishment, for example, I think it's just we're able to come to the conclusion that we can't exactly define what is exactly justice according to God, because we don't know the system itself. There's different theological ways that this has been going on. We've had Calvinism that's stated that it's already been decided from the beginning who's the elect, and then the people that aren't saved. I don't know what the name without those would be. Then you have Arminianism. There's all kinds of different things, but in the end, I honestly think that's just nobody knows until we get to that point. But I do want to go back to a thing you stated earlier whenever you started speaking. And I just want to make sure that if I heard you correctly, did you say that if someone was unjust, they shouldn't exist or something? Like they did something unjust or evil?
I'm saying that if you bring to existence more bad than good, then you should not exist.
So if someone brings more evil into the world, then they shouldn't exist.
Yeah, if you pollute it more than you make it good.
Well, that sounds more like the argument for God right there, if it's saying, because I actually used to make that same kind of argument, that if you were bringing some kind of harm, then there was no help for you, and that you should just be eradicated. But it's like you've kind of given up on humanity itself by making that kind of assertion.
Well, see, this is the difference between me and God. What I'm not advocating is keeping someone in existence to have an evil mind, but then to make them just torture and be suffering pain, and also suffering being an unrighteous person. What I'm advocating is taking that person out of existence, which is very different to keeping them in existence and just putting them on the cross for all eternity or whatever in hell.
So the problem that you have is that the evil person is being on the earth.
No, not necessarily. The problem that I have is I mean, yeah, to do with that, but to do with the bigger issue, the problem that I have is
Mhm.
that crucifying someone doesn't point out to them why it's wrong to do what they've done, and so it doesn't help them repent in that sense, and it it disenables them to do the evil more than is with more pain and what would you call it, like, liable damage or whatever, than collateral damage, than is necessary. There's no reason, and again, and I mean, I just have to say as well, you know, if it's wrong to punish someone for doing something that they don't want to do again, I mean, would you honestly punish someone if they did something but they now don't want to do it, and you know for a fact, because you're an all-knowing being, that they don't want to do that again? I mean, what is the produce? What is the good purpose of punishing someone for something that they're no longer willing to do? Because,
Well,
sorry, yeah, can I just add? Because that's the point, right?
mhm.
Jesus is not just someone who's being punished for something that he once did and is no longer willing to do. Jesus is someone who is being punished for something that he's never even done. So you need to justify punishing someone for something that they've never even done. You need to first justify how you punish someone justly for doing something that they're no longer willing to do.
Right. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm sounding like I'm going off topic,
No,
but
it's fine.
I'm trying to go back to also the argument that we were starting on earlier to continue on. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you've covered the first part was about, that person shouldn't be there, but then, it's discussing also as well as the atonement, the crucifixion that happened to Jesus. But here's the thing that I just want to point out, that there was a person named the Apostle Paul, or his original name was Saul of Tarsus, and he went around killing people, several people that were claiming to be Christians, because he thought that this was too blasphemous, that he thought that it should be eradicated, that they were not doing any good but harm. And so he would be probably considered not good for society, or evil in your case, would he not?
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess.
So then at some point later down the road, he then sees Jesus, gets a spiritual experience, gets baptized, and becomes fully convinced after his spiritual journey. And afterwards, he starts becoming a very peaceful man, starts preaching the gospel, and preaches it to more better than the apostles by reaching to almost half the country, half the world, and all that stuff. And this is interesting because in one verse that he wrote, Romans chapter 12, verse 2, "Be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." So this is basically explaining also a science of transformation, which can happen, and I think is able to happen, which some of the reasons why we have therapies, and why some people and their testimonies were different people compared to what they are.
You're almost out of time, so just let you know.
All right.
Like 20 seconds left or so.
All right, but I'll just answer one more question of his. Just remind me about what your thing on the crucifixion is real quick, so that way I can answer it before we go to closing.
Wait, do you mean my most important question, which is, do you agree that the definition of my punishment is me being punished? Because that's really the most important question.
Yeah, and I think that, yes, we should have deserved the punishment, and that's what, because I was the same person. I also thought that I should.
Not just that we deserve that. By definition, my punishment, whatever form it takes, it's always me being punished. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So in that case, you've just proven then that Jesus can't take my punishment because Jesus isn't me, and only I can take my punishment because my punishment is me being punished.
But that's the other problem, though, that Jesus is God, and
But he can't become me. He can't become me. I didn't even exist back then. How is he going to become me if I didn't exist?
He can't become you, but he can make certain things to his law. He can make certain things to his law. But I will time it here, and you can point it out in the conclusion, because Keefees says time. So.
But he would need to become me in order to take my punishment, if that's the definition, which it is.
Okay.
All right. That was some good discussion we got there. Right now we're going to move on to our final round for tonight, which is our conclusion round. Each debater gets to make their concluding statement. So we're going to start off with Christian Anarchist with his concluding statement. So basically, the point of the concluding statement is basically just to wrap up your points and kind of try to make the audience think. So I'm just going to reset the timer here for 8 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Second, bear with me. All right. So, are you ready, Christian Anarchist, to make your conclusion statement?
Go ahead, man.
All right. Begin your concluding statement.
All right. Well, the thing that questioned me towards the end of the Q&A or the back and forth open discussion is that whenever he said that Jesus doesn't have the right to take the punishment because we deserve whatever punishment is given, because that makes sense of when it comes to things like law, and we can observe that with traditional law. But then comes the thing of the idea of a lawgiver. For example, the judge and the police get to come up with the laws, and they end up putting them in place as to what is right or wrong. And we have politics which can either change laws, make new laws, and so forth. And so this can only happen if the person who's in charge of the law, or the lawgiver, makes the call. Now, the thing about it is, when it comes to what happened with the crucifixion of Jesus, not only was the decision made by the lawgiver to do so, but the action was, according to the Trinity, also done by the lawgiver, by Jesus, the Son, coming down to earth to preach the gospel that would soon be handed down and passed to us for salvation, and then he would later take upon our sins on the cross, which he, out of his own free will, decided to do, even when the Apostle Peter decided to try to stop and prevent the act from happening in the first place. When Jesus took the sins, he was there, and he even asked for forgiveness from the Father, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So Jesus, even though he was being crucified, him being the Son of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, being crucified, managed to forgive them, because he was given them the chance and the ability to do so, to be forgiven. So, the best thing that I can say, and sorry I got distracted, apparently the YouTube thing of this thing was running on my end, so, but yes, the concept is that, we are not, we're not God, so we can't determine all the time, according to God's standards, what is just and what is unjust, because we may never know if we're not searching for the certain things spiritually, and we're just looking at it from the materialistic side of things. Second thing is, if we look and seek to Jesus, we are going to find the answers we're looking for. This is my preaching type of thing I'm doing, but honestly, I just find it irrational for someone to say that the idea of someone choosing to give their life and pay the penalty for you is irrational and unjust, when we can consider several acts of such as people dying in war for our freedoms to be a just act. Then we can consider the American Revolution and even D-Day, because we knew that the Normandy landing was going to have to require sacrifices, that we consider those to be unjust sacrifices. So my whole premise is that what Jesus did was he was righteous in doing so, not because he was able to, but because he was the exact lawgiver that wanted to make a difference and wanted to allow us to be with him and to come to him in Jesus Christ. Amen. And that'll be all the time I have.
All right. And Des, are you ready to begin your concluding statement? Des, you can't hear you. Your mic's muted.
Sorry, had it on mute. I was typing.
That's why I always
Yes.
that's why I always ask if you're ready when I give the
Yeah,
full
yeah, yeah.
statement.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm ready.
All right.
So 8 minutes.
Yep. Begin your concluding statement.
Oh, great, 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 great. Okay. So let's see then. I did pretty shit, to be honest. Well, actually, I didn't do shit, but I did shit in the rebustle thing, except from like the last 20 seconds where I actually dragged it back round onto the actual point of my first argument, which was, but I won that though, which is great because I. It's silly to say that Jesus has taken your punishment if Jesus didn't exist, right? Or that it's silly to say that the gospel is true and that Jesus has taken your punishment as God if Jesus isn't God, so you could disprove that Jesus exists, or you try and disprove that Jesus is God. But it's also silly to say that Jesus is taking your punishment if your punishment is you taking your punishment. And that's what I'm trying to prove. And that's what I have proven. But yeah, I've proven that. And I've even asked the Christian anarchist whether he agrees that the definition of my punishment is me being punished, and he agreed. And so it just follows logically then that Jesus can't take a punishment that is always done to a person that he isn't. So I won. You don't need to prove that God doesn't exist or that Jesus couldn't have been God to try and prove the claim or disprove the claim rather that Jesus took your punishment as God. You just need to see what I've said. It's very simple. And then trying to talk about a few little things and just quickly address them. There should be a correlation between how forgiven you are and how moral you are. So the more forgiven you are, the more moral you should become. But it's not moral in any way to say, oh, what's that? I apparently deserve to experience extreme pain for the next 9 hours of my life, but I'm going to step aside so bravely and nobly and let Jesus do it. Let Jesus take it. You know, that's the thing. People, it's so self-centered. I mean, for as loving as it is, oh, nah, okay, but let's just say it because it sounds nice. For as loving as it would be for Jesus to take your punishment, it would be unloving to let him. But it wouldn't even be loving for Jesus to take your punishment because it's your right to be punished. Because the point of punishment, like I said, is to rejuvenate you, to make you not want to do the evil anymore, or to at least take away your capability to do it, which is both those two things are for the best for you. And if punishment doesn't do those two things, then it's not punishment, it's just abuse, which is also what crucifixion is. And again, people go on about saying you need the crucifixion to be saved. You need to believe in the crucifixion to be saved. And whether you believe in the crucifixion will decide as well your eternal fate, whether you go to heaven or whether you go to hell. How nonsensical is that, considering the fact that you, as these two guys here, Matt and Christian Anarchist, believe in the crucifixion, and yet, which decides whether they go to heaven or hell, and yet, though they believe in the crucifixion, they're still able to sin, which just proves the point that believing in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ doesn't disenable you to sin. You can carry on sinning. So it's obviously not what you need. What you need is to believe and understand and be motivated by all of the reasons to not sin, which do not include the fact, no, not the fact, the whatever that Jesus, the claim that Jesus died for you, or the idea that Jesus died for you. Yeah, again, there's no kind of moral virtue in just basically. I mean, people go on about this, don't they? Right? They say that, well, if there's no God, then there's no moral accountability. Well, actually, if there's your God, then there's no moral accountability because you can just sidestep it and claim in Jesus. But again, I'm also not just for automatically punishing people, because in between the time that people commit their crime and the time that they later get punished for it, they can change their mind, they can change their heart, their desire, and not want to do that thing anymore. And if they don't want to do it, listen, right, this is brilliant, right? If they don't want to do the crime that they are being punished for doing, then there's no reason to punish them, because the whole reason why you should be punishing them in the first place is only so that they would be able to want to whilst being free, not do that crime. So it's already done if they've come to a place in themselves where they don't want to be punished. But by crucifying Jesus, what God is asserting is that for you to be worthy to be forgiven, you have to be punished. But you don't. You don't have to be punished for doing something if you're already sorry. You just need to be sorry to be forgiven. That's it. You just need to be unwilling to do it again, because as soon as you're unwilling to do that again, you're not as bad as the action that you have done, because you're not as bad as the actions that you have done. You're as bad as the actions that you're willing to do in the present moment. Yeah, that would do. That would do.
All right. Well, we had both of our people bring their arguments to the table, but we both heard some pretty good points from Dez's side, and we also heard some pretty good points from Christian Anarchist's side as well. I just want to say, because right now my Firefox is glitching, so can any of you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, just making sure, because right now it's I don't know, Firefox is acting up a little bit.
You're still on G+, man.
Here. All right, good. All right, just making sure, because it's all laggy for me. So basically, what I'm going to do is, I was closing my other tabs and everything, and we're gonna begin our Q&A session now. So for all of you guys that want to come in and ask some questions to our debaters about tonight's topic, you guys are free to come in. I just asked before I post a link that we keep a few housekeeping rules. Please make your question brief. We want to get through as many people as we can. So I'm afraid that we can't have any follow-up questions. So I want you to, just try to explain your question as brief as possible. And I'm afraid if you have any other questions, you're just gonna have to wait till the after party. And that goes for the panelists as well. Like, I'm afraid if the panelists have any more questions for each other, that can all be continued in the after party. So I'm gonna post a link in the chat. Guys, come in. Please be respectful. Try to think of the fact that we're trying to just wrap things up here. We're trying to get through as many questions as we can. So don't come in if you don't know what's going on. And
8 minutes for Q&A. All right.
All right. So
I'm really sorry.
So
I'm really sorry. Do you mind if I go for a pee quickly?
Yeah, it'll probably take some time before, but yeah, Charles is here.
One minute, yeah. I'll just be
I have now posted the link in the side chat. Not the side chat, in the comment section of the event, so you guys can now go ahead and ask your questions if you want. And I think I told Matt to post the link in the YouTube comments.
I'll try and do that as well.
Yeah,
is that where you put it? You told me to send it to everyone else.
Oh, posted the join link in the YouTube comments. That way, anybody's watching with the YouTube stream, they can just come in. All right. Just excuse me, Charles, while we're waiting for other person to come back.
Yeah. Okay, there's Peripherals here. I don't know if he's going to have a question for me or Dez.
We're waiting for Dez to come back.
And then we'll begin the official.
Yes.
Les White. All right, we're getting more people. Here we go.
Yeah, hey, back, sorry.
All right, so are you back right now,
Yeah,
Des?
sorry, yeah.
All right, so we're getting our Q&A session, so we have more people in the room. So we're going to start with Charles because he came in first. Charles, who and what is your question? Like, who's it for and what is your question?
My question is for Des. If in this world that we live in, if there's people in this world that believe that weird activities such as S&M, sadomasochism, is acceptable because two people consent to it, why would you not believe that if the Father and the Son consented to this idea of vicarious punishment, would that not be accepted in your view?
Cool, yeah, it's a good question. However, there is the fallacy of believing that consenting to abuse makes it not abuse. It's still abuse. You know, if a child consents to their uncle, raping them, it's still abuse. It's still rape. It's still wrong. The act of crucifying someone who doesn't deserve to be crucified is intrinsically wrong, and giving your consent doesn't make it right. Would I mean, honestly, I'll just rhetorical question. I'll ask you back and try and make it brief. Would gassing the Jews be any more right if they gave their consent? No. I mean, it would be much better if they lived their lives and if they weren't in that horrible agony and so on. So I hope that answers your question.
All right. We're gonna move on to the next question. We got Peripheral Prophet in here. So Peripheral Prophet, if you wouldn't mind saying who your question is for and what your question is.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
he came in late. What about Les White? She,
Yeah, okay.
where he came next.
All right, Les, you go.
I haven't been to one of these, so I was just trying to find out, see what it is. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, man. This was a live thing that's been going on for a while. Then now it's a Q&A session.
Oh, okay. So I missed the first part of it. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
All right.
What
Idol
about Idols?
Smasher?
Yeah.
I'll just listen outside and see what's
All
going on.
right.
Okay.
Idol Smasher.
You got a
What is
question?
your question?
Hello.
Idol Smasher's not there.
I guess he must have disconnected.
All right, we'll
Oh.
go with Rafe because he entered.
Well, he said he didn't have none yet, but unless he does now or something.
You have a question, Rafe? Oh, hang on. Idol Smasher says in the side chat he's having mic issues. All right, Rafe doesn't have a question. We'll go with Maximus and we'll come back to Idol Smasher.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to
Okay.
Prophet.
All right. My question is for Des. Des, on your worldview or your point of view, how do you justify whether or not something can be considered righteous or unrighteous? And just to preface of this, it's not enough to say you can't get this on Christianity either, because even if that was the case, that would just mean, well, Christians can't have it. It doesn't mean you necessarily have a standard yourself. So what would be your standard for judging this?
A standard. Yeah, again, some actions are wrong by virtue of what they are, just as water is wet by virtue of what it is. So I think you would have to look at it from that place, like murder is wrong because it is by definition killing someone who doesn't deserve to die. And now if they don't deserve to die, that automatically means that they shouldn't die, because something that someone doesn't deserve to have happen to them should never happen. And then you also have to look at the consequences as well. But basically, it would just come down to ultimately advantages and disadvantages. When people exist and when you have bodies that feel things and possibilities as well, as soon as you have different possibilities, you have some possibilities that are better than others. It's just a better world when the possibility of someone who doesn't deserve to be crucified isn't crucified, when that's the possibility of the world happening, than when the alternative of someone who doesn't deserve to be crucified being crucified does happen. So I just talk about advantages and disadvantages, and then which advantages people deserve and which they don't deserve, which obviously comes down to very specific variables.
Okay, but just to clarify something, you're saying words like advantage and disadvantage and better or worse as if there was some kind of scale wherein you have something which is considered the ideal and have something which...
Excuse me, but did you you already asked your question, didn't you?
I did. I was just asking for a clarification. No worries, I can sit back.
Yeah, I'm just going to say we have a lot of people to get through, so I'm afraid we only have one question, no follow-ups.
No worries. Thank you, Des, for answering the question.
Yeah, sure, good question.
Yeah, so we can get to the people. So, Rafe, do you have a question now? wonder if Rafe has a question or not, because he was here and he said he might have one. But he's
Not yet. What about
No, he still doesn't have one.
No.
All right.
All right,
Peripheral
so what?
Prophet.
Hello? Can I
Hold
throw
on,
my
wait.
name?
Never mind. Let's go to Otto real quick, since we did say we were going to go back to
Yeah,
him.
sorry about that.
Yeah, Al Smasher, you're good, man.
What's your
Thank
question?
you very much. I've had issues on my mic. How does one reconcile the crucifixion paying for the sins of man when in Devarim or Deuteronomy 24:16, the fathers shall not be put to death for their children, neither shall the children be put to death for the father, period. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. There's a few others in Ezekiel, but no man shall pay for another man's sin. How does one reconcile that part of the law with the claim that Jesus and him getting nailed to wood somehow removes or pays for your own sin? Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question, because we got the concept of Father, and Son, and all that, and that would go back to the reference of God being the Father and still part of the Trinity, paying the sacrifice on the cross for the sins of his children and all that stuff. Yeah, it's a very good question, and I would answer it like this: that God, like I mentioned earlier in the debate, is the lawgiver, the lawmaker. So just like what we have in our systems, if there's any changes or any sort of ways that he wants to makes, then he has the right to do so, because that is him and he's able to do so. He's God, and if he wants to give himself to as a sacrifice as the Son, Jesus, or the Jesus Christ, the Son, gives himself up so that we may have that chance to be in eternal paradise with him, then I think that God is correct in doing so. I hope that answers your question.
I appreciate your time, sir.
All right. Now we're going to move on to, if no one else shows up in the room, this will be our final question. It'll be from Sugar. Otherwise, if somebody else comes in the room, we'll have time for one more question. So if any of you guys are done, or you're not here to ask a question, maybe you can drop out, one of you, for somebody else. But otherwise, we're going to go with Sugar for what's going to be our final question if nobody else has one or shows up. So, Sugar, what's your question?
Hey guys, this is for Des. Before I say anything, you guys both did great, awesome, nice to see great manners and strong debates. But my question's for Des. Des, you had mentioned earlier that having Jesus pay for these sins would be illogical and that would go against God. So if God is truly omnipotent, then our logic would not apply. So for us to feel that this is an illogical act would be outside of our knowledge. We can't presume to know the mind of God. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, God isn't omnipotent, obviously, because if he was omnipotent, then he would know that to punish someone for doing something, for not doing something, and for what someone else has done, he would know that that is wrong. But clearly, he doesn't know that's wrong because he's done it, and apparently he doesn't do wrong things intentionally as well. So I would say that, and I would say as well just simple things like no person determines what is logical. They merely perceive it, and God isn't the Lord of what's logical or what's moral. God can't think any action into being moral or logical, and the obligations every person is under, no one decides what the obligations are. So I hope that helps.
All right, we're going to have our final question from Peripheral Prophet.
Yeah, so I'm presuming Des is either an atheist or agnostic, is that correct?
It is correct, but I did live a spell as believing that the God of the Bible actually existed, and whilst believing as well all of these things that I've just said. This isn't an atheist argument. It's nothing to do with atheism.
No.
It's to do with
right,
but I'm just saying. I'm just saying though. I'm just making a point. It's to do with your beliefs about forgiveness and your beliefs about what my punishment, that phrase, means. Nothing to do with atheism.
Sure. So, at what point did morality appear in our reality? Just to maybe kind of give you a little. Let's say that there was no life and then there was life. At what point in the evolutionary process did right or wrong come into the picture?
Right and wrong are categories, they're attributes, and it's like saying at what point did the attributes of being blue or of being existent or of being wet or whatever come into existence. They're attributes, they're concepts. You have to have a concept of morality, of moral, before you can have moral actions. So the concepts exist not as physical things that you can go to like Mount Everest. It's like there's a concept of two, and you can have two things, but you can't go and just point out one specific physical thing that is the concept of two. And if you don't have the concept of two, you can't have two things. So I'm saying the concept of morality is what enables moral things to happen, and it's not as though you need two things and two more things so that you can prove that 2 + 2 = 4, right? Is 2 + 2 4 before any four things exist and are added together as 2 and 2 things? Yeah, it is. So it already exists. What is moral already exists before anyone's acted. It exists regardless of what anyone thinks, cares about, likes, whatever. I hope that answers your question.
Not really, but I don't think I get a
Oh, okay.
so.
Sorry, no. If it doesn't, could you please just let him follow up, because that's my fault.
We have to get to one more person.
Sorry.
Right. We can continue that after.
We're going. Yeah. I said this. You'd be the last person, but Brother John asked nicely enough, and you know what? He can have the last question.
Thanks a lot, Keefees, and I appreciate everybody's time. My understanding of a sacrifice is one of giving up something. There's a loss that seems to be entailed. How is Jesus, if knowing that he's going to rise from the dead, truly a sacrifice? If there's nothing to be lost.
Wait. So who's this question for?
Oh, that's for you, Christian.
All right. So repeat it again, real quickly.
Yeah, my understanding of a sacrifice is that you're giving up something. There's a loss that is entailed for the one who's sacrificing. But if Jesus is rising from the dead and being God and knowing he's going to rise, where is the loss? How is it a sacrifice?
I would like to point out in the side chat that Charles said, well, I mean, it hurt like hell, probably, but I don't think it would hurt like hell for Jesus, but yes, I've heard this as what's the point if Jesus was going to be resurrected, that it wouldn't be like an actual sacrifice. I think it was more the gesture and act to show, because there's one thing that I've seen from John Walton in his Old Testament works, that he forms this idea called the archetype view. Like, he believes that Adam and Eve were literal, but that they also serve a symbolic purpose for being there. That Adam was supposed to represent the male, what the role model was, and Eve was supposed to represent the female role model. And the same could go for what happened in the crucifixion. It was showing why we needed to die, why we were needing the sins, and basically the whole penalty and punishment, and he was showing an act of forgiveness in very radical sense. And as I mentioned earlier, with John chapter 15, verse 13, greater is no love than this, that a man shall lay his life down for his brother, and all that. So he's showing the generous act of kindness, and that's what I think. I mean, even if there is no actual death coming from Jesus, I mean, there's still something being done with it. It was just not without purpose. But again, also to understand that we're not God, and we can't understand that much from what is God.
All right. Well, we've had some interesting questions here today. I want to thank you guys for coming in and participating. I want to thank the debaters for coming in, Christian Anarchist and Des Saunders for doing their job representing their points well. I want to thank Matt Yester for being my fill-in moderator because Drew and Dusty weren't able to come in here to help, but that's okay because we got ourselves a good moderator here. So thanks for filling in. Are you gonna say no problem or something?
Yeah, man, no problem.
All right. Well, if that's the case, this has been the I'm Right, You're Wrong show, where we provide a properly structured debate room for the Google Plus community. Pretty soon, hopefully, we're gonna get the I'm Right, You're Wrong show channel verified, so then you'll be able to catch all of our shows in that there, rather than the Keefees The Elite Hunter channel. So we plan to make a transition to our official channel pretty soon. So in the meantime, be sure to follow the I'm Right, You're Wrong show in your Google circles and subscribe to that, because that's going to be the home of the I'm Right, You're Wrong show in the future. For now, everything's just getting posted on my one channel. So thanks for stopping by. If you want to support the show, be sure to follow me, Keefees, on Facebook at Keefees The Elite Hunter. On Twitter, it's Keefees Keffers. If you want to check out my music, you can go to Keefees Stash and Cash on SoundCloud. My boy Slicksum on Facebook. He's the one that's helping moderate Drew Ward, so check him out. And yeah, this has been the I'm Right, You're Wrong show, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hopefully next time we'll have a really good debate, because I actually plan to get Nephilim Free versus Christian Anarchist in here, and it should be a doozy of a time. Well, we'll see you guys later. So have that. Yeah, that like Idol Smasher saying in the chat. Oh no is right. Yeah, it's gonna be something. Let me tell you, you're not gonna want to miss next episode. I'm telling you, man. It's gonna be cool. We're gonna attract a big audience here. All right. Well, see y'all later. Just be sure to follow me, Keefees The Elite Hunter, with your circles, and subscribe to my channel. Peace out, niggas.